Welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Jay Stevens Podcast. This is episode number 89, dedicated to a young lady who in 1989 won the Wimbledon Championships and the U.S. Open, Miss Steffi Graf. And as always, thank you for listening and downloading to another episode of the podcast. On today's episode, we have Mr. Ethan Piechota, host of the Prospect Podcast, coming on join me to talk about high school players or basketball players that are taking an alternate route in between high school and fulfilling their dream of playing in the National Basketball Association. Ethan does a phenomenal job of breaking down NBA scouts and breaking down film and ranking them and talking about their pros, their cons, their strengths, their weaknesses, about how we should view them or how he views them going into the NBA and before they're drafted. Now, he does a phenomenal job, just like Mr. Ryan Roberts of the NFL Draft Bible, who I had on just about a week ago now, getting us ready for the NFL Draft. They do a great job of breaking down film. Trust me, if I could break down film just like them, I would. Breaking down film is not easy. I can watch things and see exactly what I'm watching on the television, but relaying that same information in a detailed format just like they do a phenomenal job with that. I will leave that to them. This conversation was also recorded on Sunday, April the 26th. The day it was before the episodes 3 and 4 of The Last Dance were aired. So you'll hear me in the beginning ask Ethan about The Last Dance, what he thought about the first 2 episodes, then what he's anticipating or thinking we'll see in episodes 3 and 4 and the rest of the documentary. So in case you're wondering, why in the world is Jay going back in time? No, this was actually recorded before episodes 3 and 4 were actually aired on television. So without further ado, let's go ahead and take a trip as I hit my microphone to Long Beach, California, to enjoy my fun conversation with Mr. Ethan Piechota, host of the Prospect Podcast. Hey, Ethan, welcome to the podcast.
Appreciate it. Thank you for having me on.
No problem, man. No problem. Before we get into basketball and the analysis that you provide and that you do on a daily basis, I want to ask you quickly, how are things going with you in COVID-19 and how are you coping with this abnormal time in life?
Man, I mean, it's tough because there's just, there's not much to do, but this is a time for someone like me, at least with what I'm interested in, where there's no live sports, no live basketball, to catch up on old basketball, study trends and whatnot, kind of, really get in depth on the 2020 NBA draft class and whatnot. And we've been getting a lot of news, whether it's recruiting, like we're going to talk about today, kind of how that's shifted. And just in terms of, the NBA, college basketball, high school basketball in general. So I've been keeping up with it, but it's been tough, definitely.
I bet. What old games have you been watching?
Man, it's been a lot of Jason Tatum for me, because before his draft process, I was never really high on his game. So I came back, I watched a bunch of old 2016, 2017 Duke games, and I was, kind of just watching him, where did I go wrong in my evaluation? But not only him, just, a bunch of players that, Markelle Fultz and whatnot. Being a 76ers fan, that one's tough to look back on because I swore he was going to be the next, D-Wade straight out of Washington, the way he was playing. But obviously that didn't turn out. But, just kind of guys like that, evaluating their games, seeing what translates to the NBA level and whatnot. So, I mean, I've been keeping up with it.
Okay. Have you picked up any new trends as far as like new trends or like, not trends, that's not the word, any new hobbies during this time?
I don't know. I think it's mainly just been kind of looking through those old games, like I've said. Like, and it hasn't even been just for prospects. Just like going on YouTube and searching full games from the '80s and whatnot, like games that I wasn't even alive for. I've been watching a lot of Ralph Sampson. He's insane on the Houston Rockets. It's been crazy to me to watch him play with Hakeem. I wish they could have been together for a few more years. But yeah, just kind of I've always stumbled upon the old Houston Rockets teams. I don't know why.
The teams of the 80s or the teams of the 90s? I know you mentioned Ralph Sampson, but those 90s teams are pretty good too.
Yeah, both. I was watching, I think was it the 95 or 96 team, or maybe it was 94, that beat the Knicks when John Starks could not make a shot in the fourth quarter. That was the full game I watched. I think it was game 7.
Knicks fans hate that. They definitely do. Have you watched? I know we just the Last Dance just played last week. It's going to air, episodes 3 and 4 will air again tonight. Have you watched game 1 or 2, whichever game it was, and Jordan put up 63 points against the Celtics in the 86 playoffs? I think it was 86. Did you watch that game at all?
I have not watched that game back, but I mean, from the highlights from what I saw in the documentary last week. That was just an insane performance. I didn't even know he dropped 63 that early in his career. So I mean, that was crazy to watch. Like he's amazing. Can't wait for tonight. Honestly, it's gonna be another great 2 episodes.
Yeah, man, it's gonna be amazing. Really quickly, what was your observation? I know you're a little bit younger than I am. What was your observation last week when watching episodes 1 and 2, and then what are you kind of anticipating and hoping for tonight with episodes 3 and 4?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just getting educated as it goes. Like I didn't obviously learning about the whole Jared Krause thing was insane. I mean, he looks horrible right now, but from what I've heard, from what I've read, the coming episodes are going to be kind of establishing more of like a parody basis on Jared Krause, so everyone's not going to absolutely hate him by the time this documentary is over. I'm not sure how that's going to end up, but kind of just anticipating how that relationship grows. Obviously, I know Pippen came back this last season, but just seeing like actually like what materialized into him coming back onto the team for their last championship is going to be interesting. So I mean, I'm ready for it. It's definitely something I need when nothing else is going on.
Yeah, I know. Last week when they first came on, the ratings came out. I think it was Monday. I think it was Monday morning or Monday evening or Tuesday morning, one of the two. But the ratings came out. They said that documentary itself, it had more viewers than all but two NBA games this season or this past season that got cut short, which is like it came at the right time. Yeah, the NFL draft is here, but the NFL draft, it's a 3-day process, and there's nothing for us right now as sports fans for the foreseeable future. We don't know when sports are going to come back. We hope it happens tomorrow, but we all know that's not going to happen. So the documentary getting pushed up from that time period of after the NBA Finals up until right now. I mean, we have this weekend, we have tonight, and then we have 3 more Sundays. And for people like myself and like you, it gives us something to talk about. The following days after that, Monday and Tuesday, we get to kind of recap and talk about what happened and kind of digest what was thrown at us and what was on our TV screen. And then the Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday is kind of just like, hey, let's look forward to anticipate, kind of predict what's going to happen, kind of like a regular NFL week or NBA game. You kind of talk about what happened that very next day, and then the following days after, you kind of start anticipating what's to come. With Michael Jordan, only because I know I didn't mean to talk about this as much as I have, but it's here. With Michael Jordan, what separates him in your eyes from today's players?
I just think he just has a different mentality. I like to keep like the greatest of all time debate aside because I just think LeBron and Jordan are both just amazing in their own respects. At least from what I've watched, and I did not watch enough Michael Jordan. Was not alive for him being in the NBA, so I feel like I can't even comment on that side of it. But just watching him through stuff I've learned, before the Last Dance and through the Last Dance and just the 2 episodes, I just think his mentality going out into the court is different in the respect that yeah, he put up numbers, but I mean, in my opinion, he just wanted to win, and that's the biggest thing I see with a guy like him is he would do absolutely anything to win the game. That entire story about him pretty much defying Bulls management by going to play in North Carolina pickup when he had broken foot or something like that. I was like, that was crazy to watch, and that was crazy to hear and comprehend, and that's what I kind of gained from it is just how much of a winner he was. He won on all 3 levels.
Yeah, he did. He did. He's definitely. I got to kind of understand basketball at the tail end of his Bulls career. The Wizards career, I watched that. I was old enough to understand that at that time, but it was still like, this isn't Michael Jordan. And so this documentary to me and to you as well, educating all of us, all the listeners of the podcast, all the viewers of sports that are watching this at the same time, is really educating us, reminding us that Michael Jordan, yeah, he had the skill set, yeah, he had the mentality, but he brought it every single night, and he always knew. Especially one thing I noticed when he first got there with the Bulls, I think it was his rookie year. The first 2 weeks, his goal was to attack the best player and then be better than him. And it's like, you're a rookie in the NBA. You're what, 20, 21 years old? I think he was 21 years old as a rookie, and he's attacking the best player on the team, saying, hey, I know you're good. I know you're the best here, but I want to be better than you, and I want to work harder than you. And I want everyone on the team to know that in crunch time, you can trust me to be the best player on the team to provide to push us and propel us to another win. And Ethan, I think with Michael Jordan, that's one thing that we all look back at. It's like, yeah, he had the skill set, but ultimately it was his desire and his will to push himself further than even he thought he could at times to be the best player that a lot of us have ever seen, or one of the best players a lot of people have ever seen.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, you mentioned it too. They threw in that nugget where he said, I think it was, I'm going to drop as many points as I can or play as well as I can every single given night because there might be a fan that's never seen me before and never gets to see me again. So, I mean, that was definitely something I took away from it. Is just he was built different in his mentality that, he was going out, to win for the right reasons and whatnot.
Exactly, exactly. There's a guy that has a mentality that when he was in high school was maybe a little bit different than others. LaMelo Ball, I believe you mentioned that you saw him out at AAU tournaments. I want to get your insight on that here in a little bit. But LaMelo Ball, he had a different route on the forefront on TV than a lot of people. Michael Jordan, had a great impact. Got cut from the varsity team his sophomore year in high school, and everyone goes back and says, "Oh, his varsity coach is crazy." Well, no one really. I didn't see Michael. You didn't see Michael at that time. We don't know his stature. We don't know much about him. It's just you cut Michael. We see the after effect, not what happened at that time. And LaMelo Ball, I remember when he was 15 years old, he was a guy that I was like, oh, he's cocky. I don't really like him. I don't like his playing style. I think he's full of himself. And then I didn't know, or I didn't believe he's going to progress to be the player that he currently is. Of course, he played overseas. I think he played twice. He played overseas, came back, played Aspire Institute in Ohio, then also played in the JBA with his dad's league, kind of an alternate route for players that didn't want to go to college that could play somewhat professionally or a little minor league style basketball, then go to the pros after that. And then he just played in Australia, the NBL, and a different route than a lot of players take to get to the NBA. A lot of players, they go from high school to college to the NBA, kind of like using the college basketball as a farm system or a minor league for the NBA. When your analysis, when you assess LaMelo Ball, how do you think that him going to play overseas and playing in different leagues that weren't necessarily college basketball or the G League or a minor league system, how do you think going overseas and then coming back helped him prepare for the NBA draft?
I mean, looking at it now, it was an excellent overall decision by LaMelo. Obviously, LeVar had a lot of implication in him going to Lithuania first, leaving Chino Hills for going his last two. I think he was a sophomore or going into a junior. And going into his junior season when he went to Lithuania the first time, and obviously spent time in Spire, and then now in the NBL with the Illawarra Hawks this year. I mean, I think it was an excellent decision. Unfortunately, doesn't look like it's going to set the exact trend that I thought might be possible with, high school prospects going to the NBL exactly, because the G League has just emerged from absolutely nowhere. And it's much more of a viable option to just, stay in the States instead of having to, travel across the country to play professional basketball. But I mean, definitely LaMelo, when you look at him right now, he's the number one prospect on my, generational upside talent. And a decision to, go from a high school setting, an amateur setting, to a professional setting to prepare himself for the NBA at such a young age was an extremely mature decision and something that's definitely going to pay off.
Yeah, I agree with that. I 100% agree with that. I went back and looked at your big board that you put on Twitter. I think it was about 7 days ago. And you have LaMelo Ball at number one, your number one prospect overall. You broke it down into different categories. You have one, then you break it down that way. Then category number two, or group two, excuse me, and break it down that way. And then group three. LaMelo Ball being number one, what characteristics or what's his skill set that has him being number one on your big board 2.0 currently?
Right. See, I mean, I've gone back and forth between him and Okongwu, but the biggest question mark I feel like with a lot of people with LaMelo Ball is, is the maturity. Like, is he mature? Is his personality and whatnot? Is he going to put the work in? I think the work ethic is a viable question. As far as maturity goes, I mean, this guy is 18 years old. He just played for an NBL team and then absolutely bought the team outright when he's not even a member of the squad anymore. The very next year to keep them afloat. I think that's a pretty mature decision if you're asking me. And as far as this game goes, it's a 6'7" point guard with unreal ball handling and, unreal vision. He makes passes across the court like they're, a chest pass from a guy 5 feet away. It's insane to watch him pass the basketball. I think he's going to be successful wherever he goes. Obviously, he does have his weaknesses, 25% from three this year when he was on the Illawarra Hawks. So he's going to have to become a lot more consistent with the jumper. But like we saw with his brother Lonzo, kind of came into the league, struggled with his jump shot right away, had weird mechanics, weird stroke. But I really think LaMelo is going to have, the ability to change that shot and fix it for the foreseeable future. That's going to be key for his game. And the guy's 6'7" with as long as arms as he has, great foot speed on defense. I think, he didn't even try on defense, in my opinion, from the 15 games or so I watched him play with the Illawarra Hawks this year. But I buy him, obviously at the NBA level. where the spotlight's on him to, kind of exercise that natural potential that he has on defense. Because even going back to Chino Hills, the way they played, I mean, that was, him and LiAngelo pressing up and then just absolutely just leaving the ball as it goes to the other half and just cherry picking. That's why he scored 100 in one game. So, I mean, there's definitely potential on the defensive side, but it's a question mark for now. I just think with the upside in this draft, especially, that puts him at number one.
Have you ever thought about making your own podcast? It seems like that's the in thing right now. Well, do I have the people for you? Anchor is a one-stop shop for recording, hosting, and distributing your podcast. Best of all, it's 100% free and extremely easy to use. And now, Anchor will match with great sponsors who want to advertise on your podcast. That means you can get paid for podcasting right away. To get started, go to anchor.fm/start. Once again, that's anchor.fm/start. I recently went back and was doing some research and preparing for our conversation. And Andrew Bogut, we all know him playing in the NBA, playing multiple years, got played with the Warriors as of recently and got a ring with them. Andrew Bogut played against LaMelo Ball. And he actually mentioned in the article where they're asking him questions about LaMelo and his playing style and things like that. He actually mentioned two things that you just mentioned. He's inconsistent from three. I think you mentioned 25%. Then also his defense has to improve. But those are all things that I think with the growth, with the maturity, getting his quote-unquote bald body, as his dad, LeVar Ball, called it back in, I think, 2017, when his dad was going all around the media, TV stations, the radio stations, really is kind of talking about his boys and putting his boys' names out there, all three of them. LiAngelo's kind of the forgotten one, but his dad did not say, hey, his dad did not forget LiAngelo, even though people didn't want to talk about him, kind of being like the third guy there. That's not really most people said he wasn't an NBA talent. LeVar didn't care. He said, hey, that's my boy. I'm going to give him the same treatment, give him the same publicity that I'm going to give everyone else. But defense has to improve. The inconsistency from three. I think the three-point shooting, that will improve once it gets better coaching, because you get to the NBA and you get the coaching every single day from top-notch coaches. You can get top-notch shooting coaches. You can get guys that can kind of help you, saying, hey, that's a bad shot. You have a player over here that's open. That's a horrible shot. Get your man open, and it'll give you more free space down the road later in the game to really succeed. But I think his ball body, as his dad said, Ethan, that will kind of help his defense improve down the road.
Absolutely. Yeah, I agree with that again. And a good point about LiAngelo, too. LeVar did not forget about him whatsoever. Kind of unfortunate, too. LiAngelo just signed a deal with, I think it was the Oklahoma City Thunder's G League team right before the NBA went on shutdown. So, man. Again, like, you talk about LaMelo, and the reason I buy him, again, is he has grown a lot, like, since his time. You mentioned you saw him at 15 years old. I mean, at 15 years old, he had, a gap in his teeth, and he was extremely cocky, like you said, and he just cherry-picked down the court every single time. And I didn't really know what he was going to become at that point, and he's turned himself into this prospect. A lot of it has, had to do with him growing to 6'7", but he has turned himself. He has improved his game. You mentioned the AAU thing. Yeah, I mean, I growing up in Southern California, playing against his big baller team and whatnot. We'd always see them in the gym. LeVar, LaMelo, Lonzo would come to the games, LiAngelo and whatnot. But watching him since his freshman year at Chino Hills, through AAU, through the circuit, and just the amount of places that he's gone, I definitely think that he has grown as a player exponentially in the last few years. And I think that's just going to keep going up for him. That's really why I buy him as my number one guy, is that I think that growth will continue. Like you said, again, NBA shooting coaches are a different level. His brother Lonzo has obviously reworked his shot to become a reputable three-point shooter. I think he's going to keep getting better when you talk about Lonzo. But LaMelo has a real chance as well to kind of rework that shot, fix the mechanics, because he can shoot from outside. I mean, we saw him pulling up from NBA three-point range in high school. And although the percentages weren't there, he was still doing it. So I still think that's a part of his game, something that can definitely be improved upon. And defensively, he might not ever be a lockdown first team defender, but becoming someone who is passable on that side is key to him. He could still be a star with not the greatest defensive ability, but I still think he has the tools and whatnot. So. Yeah, I mean, I really am a fan of his game, especially in this draft class, which is relatively weaker. You got to go with guys who have, the highest upside, in my opinion. This is a guy who's NBA ready right now.
Yeah, he has really kind of, I don't want to say patented, because it wouldn't be a patent, but he's really kind of perfected in his own way somewhat that or like the transition pass, three-quarter court pass or full court pass with the one hand. Or I even saw one play, he drop the dime between two defenders. I'm like, his vision, especially from back that time, like you mentioned, his maturity on the court and his vision has ultimately improved all the time. And I'm sure in your analysis and when you're watching film, you're thinking, wow, how in the world does a kid that was 15 years old mature to be this guy and then ultimately become to be the best passer in a professional league before he's 19 years old?
Right. Again, it's just like from that point on, it's everyone kind of used to joke about him. Oh, LaMelo is going to be in the NBA. LaMelo is going to be this first round pick. It was kind of just a joke because Lonzo got drafted, but I mean, it materialized, and he took the steps to be, to turn into one, and it's been extremely fun to watch him grow.
Definitely. Another guy that's fun to watch and took a different route to the NBA, just like LaMelo. His name, I almost called him Lonzo. LaMelo did. It's RJ Hampton. And I remember when this news came out last year, he was doing the media circuit, all the TV stations. He went to ESPN, was on Get Up. I think he was actually on set at Get Up, which was huge at the time. A kid that's in high school coming on set, and then announcing and letting everyone know that he's going to be going to college, not going to the G League, which was an option at that time. I don't want people to think that it wasn't. That was definitely an option at that time, and I believe the amount of money for a contract was $125,000. And then I was listening to Jalen Rose earlier today, and he said, well, $125,000, you can go overseas to Australia like these guys did in the NBL, and you can get paid $500,000. Now, even though you have your taxes are coming out, you have to pay your agents, insurance, even though you're going to be making less than that ultimately when you net it out and it comes back to you, if I can make a $125,000 contract or a $500,000 contract, the money itself, it kind of makes sense in most people's minds. If I'm not going to college, of course, go to a place where I can make the most money, where I can also prepare under good competition in a professional league. And RJ Hampton, on your big board, he is currently in the third group. He's not in the second group. I'm going to name some of these guys for the listeners that are listening: Anthony Edwards, Tyrese Maxey, Devin Vassell, I think I messed up his name, Tyrese Halliburton, Obi Toppin, Tyrell Terry, just to name some of the guys there. Then he's in your third group with Patrick Williams, Aaron Nesmith, Cole Anthony, Jalen Smith, James Wiseman. RJ Hampton, how do you think that this decision to go play in the NBL, just like LaMelo, how did it help him prepare for the NBA?
I think, with RJ, you can make the case. A few years ago, a lot of people were talking about the 2020 NBA draft, kind of projecting it already as a weaker class. A lot of people were talking about RJ as a potential top 3 pick, if not the number 1 overall pick, the way that he showed out in Texas in high school. But so you can make the argument that, going overseas might have hurt his draft stock a little bit because maybe people aren't watching him play as much. From what I've seen with him, this is like the most 50-50 guy I am on the class, because I can't tell whether he's like a completely replaceable type of guard in terms of his skill set and whatnot, or if he's someone with his speed and with his potential development of an outside shot that could turn into one of the better players from this class. So I'm still kind of out on whether it helped him or not moving overseas. I definitely think it was the right decision, because he's securing a contract at that young of an age and getting professional experience. That's the one thing you can say about him, is that he is now in a sense ready for the NBA, because he has played against professional talent and guys that are much older than him for an entire year. So I think, I don't know if it necessarily helped his draft stock. On some people, I've seen some people extremely low on RJ. I've seen people pretty high on RJ. I'm kind of just in the middle at this point, not ready to make a decision on his game. Kind of want to go back to him and watch just a few of his games again and see if I can differentiate anything. But and again, I don't know what NBA teams are gonna value his skill set either, because I don't know if a lot of them were able to watch RJ this year. And I think he was New Zealand. He was on New Zealand Breakers. So it's definitely gonna be something I'm interested in seeing. His value around the NBA. See how that's kind of measured. But at least for me, I'm kind of just 50-50 on the guy. I think if anything, if I had to make a decision on it, I would say that his draft stock probably lowered a little bit from going to the NBL. And I don't know if that's a bad thing or not, but just in terms of his, I think, overall consensus on a lot of boards, I think a lot of people fell on him after watching him on a professional stage, then rather than rose on his game.
Yeah, that is possibly true. I saw a quote from him when he was talking about why he chose to go overseas for the New Zealand Breakers and play over there in that league instead of going to college. And he said this, quote, "Live like a pro and to play with grown men and not have to juggle books and basketball, end quote. And I completely understand that there are a lot of guys that go to college and they know they're going to be one and done after the end of their season. They're kind of, you can tell, like, conference tournament time, and then also once the NCAA tournament starts, as soon as that's over, they're done. They don't care. Even though school's almost over, if you make it to the national championship game, you literally have, 4 weeks left of class, maybe 3 weeks, and then finals, and then you're done. You're ultimately done. But I completely understand his mindset. I kind of respected that at a young age, you're going from everything you know, especially the country that you grew up in, to go overseas to a place you don't know, around people you don't know. And a lot of times grown men, you're playing basketball, they just don't really – they're going to look down on you and treat you worse because you're an 18-year-old kid playing over here, coming over here and saying – and in their eyes, they know you're trying to take their spot, not just trying to up your draft stock. You're trying to take their spot and take their starting job and to take their season awards and all these things. So he had it very tough. And I do completely understand going over there, it's a risk. It can hurt you. And a lot of people, they kind of don't know what happens overseas. It's kind of just like the professional players that come from Europe and all the other professional leagues. If Luka Doncic would have played over here in college, he would have had – I don't think people would have been as shocked and surprised as we are with them coming to the NBA. And then we look back and go on Wikipedia, we look at YouTube, we look at some of the research and some of the things that we see from all the top athletes and top candidates and top prospects coming to the NBA. You're like, oh, Luka's been good. Luka's been progressing. And professional guys over there, they're saying Luka is the real deal. So I do understand R.J. Hampton and how it may have hurt him. But ultimately, from what I'm seeing on film, from some of the things that I've watched and some of the things that I've been reading, I think it could have been a good thing for him. I'm not saying it's going to be a trend where you're going to see a lot of guys do what he did, or even LaMelo Ball did, or even Jalen Green, who we're going to be talking about next. But I think it's going to be a good thing for him because he's getting better. He's learning how to be a pro at a younger age than, say, someone at 20, at 21, at 19. That extra year, maybe it didn't help his draft stock, but his adjustment to the NBA, Ethan, may have been helped by going overseas.
Yeah, definitely. Again, well, the biggest thing for me is that he did gain that professional experience in this 1 year, with New Zealand, which is definitely a positive indicator and something that, is worth noting. Watching back the game that he played against LaMelo in the NBL, there was multiple times throughout that game, you can argue throughout the overall landscape of the game, the two played. I mean, RJ's team blew out LaMelo. LaMelo's team was 6-27, I think 6-23, something like that. Worst team in the NBL this year. But RJ outplayed LaMelo in a lot of aspects of that game. In terms of, just he was dominant on offense. LaMelo really couldn't stay in front of him. And I don't know if that's so much of an indicator on LaMelo, who, again, like I said, really didn't try on defense that much this year, or RJ, who, kind of popped out on the screen in that game. He was blown by LaMelo. He has an explosive first step. He can get to the rim. He applies great rim pressure. He's excellent around the rim finishing. And when you're a 6'4" guard and you kind of have, the vertical pop that RJ has, that's the most intriguing part of his game. And then on defense, he's a guy who's, when you're 6'4" again, as a point guard, you're already at a height advantage, and you have the foot speed that he has, and you kind of have the longer arms, and you have good instincts. Defensively, he could be, you could become a nightmare. That's the kind of, guard prototype that really excels on defense in the NBA is R.J. Hampton's build, if you will. So, I mean, again, excited to see what he does at the next level. Completely agree with you that I don't think, the 1 year overseas hurt him in a long-term standpoint. As for now, I definitely say with his draft stock, it dipped a little bit in the short term, but it all matters, what you do when you're actually at the big stage, not, what happens before the NBA. So, he's definitely going to be getting drafted come July, August, whenever we have the draft. So, but I definitely agree with that. In the long term, having this year of professional basketball under his belt will definitely be a positive.
What would you say is his best strength? What's he the best at? And then what would you say there's one thing that he could definitely work on here in his early NBA career whenever he gets drafted?
His burst is, his speed off the ball, on the ball, whatever you want to say is really eye popping. He's just extremely fast, and that kind of predicates his entire game. The speed that he plays with, indicates how good he is on defense, how well he gets to the rim. He's just a great athlete overall. That's the most intriguing thing with RJ is that he's fun to watch because he's going to dunk on someone. He's also going to be able to cross over someone, and he's going to be able to lock up on defense. The biggest thing for him is that in the NBL especially, teams did not respect his jump shot at all, which is, understandable. He was not a good three-point shooter. He has not been a good three-point shooter since high school. Wasn't a good three-point shooter with New Zealand this year. So a lot of teams just went under the screens and cut off his driving lanes. If he's able to become a respectable, 35% to 40% three-point shooter at the NBA level from behind the arc, it's going to open up his game completely. And those driving lanes you're going to, start to see them open up. Also, his passing ability. He has really underrated vision for a guy that we're not sure if he's going to be a point guard or shooting guard yet. I kind of just have him in that combo guard mold because I can't really decide on whether or not in the NBA he's going to be a guy that's going to need the ball or going to be able to play off the ball. But all the indicators for him as a point guard are there. And that's, that if he does turn into a point guard, someone that you can give the ball with his speed, with his ability to get to the rim, having him as a point of attack defender on defense, I mean, that's definitely something that is intriguing. That's why I'm definitely not out on him yet. Excited to see what he does at the next level because he is a really good prospect.
Yeah, and then did you mention a weakness?
Yeah, just that three-point shooting. I think it will open up his entire game, especially on offense. Whether that's getting teammates open, getting to the rim, finding those driving lanes, attacking the basket. It's hard to do. Being a 76ers fan, I'm watching Ben Simmons right now, and you kind of just wait for him to develop a reputable 35% outside shot and kind of wait for the MVP season to go on. That's my dream at least. But I mean, it's because everyone just goes under the screen on him and whatnot. So it's kind of the same thing, not the same thing because RJ can at least pull it from deep and will pull it from deep. But opening up that outside shot is going to be huge for him.
I was wondering if you want to compare and put that comparison together with Ben Simmons and RJ Hampton as you're describing his jump shot. It was kind of like, wow, as you're talking about it and talking about how he can improve, thinking Ben Simmons automatically, he's the first thing that came into my mind.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's funny too with Simmons because people will go under the screen on him, pick him up from the paint, whatever you want, he'll still blow by him. It's crazy to watch. But with RJ, not being 6'10", not being the size that Ben is, it's a lot tougher for him to create that space in the key. You can't just go post up some, Kelly Oubre type forward guard, whatever. So it's going to be it's going to be key for him to be, a good outside shooter, and that opens up his game completely.
Definitely. Another guy. This news just came out. About a week ago, maybe week and a half ago, maybe 2 weeks at the most. Jalen Green, number one on ESPN's top 100. 247 Sports has him ranked as a number 3 prospect in this class, and then also in Rivals, he's number 2. Another guy, he decided to go from a different route. The other 2 guys, LaMelo played in a few Lithuania, then Australia, then also played in the JBA with his dad's league, the alternate league for players who didn't want to go to college to play a little bit and then go into the NBA. RJ Hampton went from high school right to the New Zealand Breakers. Jalen Green's going from high school to the G League. And to me, this is interesting because we all know how the G League and their travel, it's not your regular typical professional travel because it's not a professional league. It's more like your farm system or your feeder system or kind of like your minor league for the NBA. And Jalen Green, it's kind of I'm watching him. I'm not the biggest, and I like high school. So I like high school sports, high school basketball. I do a lot of high school stuff, watching games, high school football, basketball here in Indiana. But when it comes to the national scene, I don't really know much about him. So when I heard his name, I'm like, okay, let me see some stuff. Let me go in and watch some stuff on YouTube. Let me go ahead and read some articles on him. Let me see what this guy's about to see if this move is proper for him. And it jumps off the page. He's he has a quick first step. He elevates very, very well. He's a creative finisher for a guy that's a senior in high school. But in my mind, I'm wondering, why would you go from high school to the G League? Now, I just understand he's going to be in a different program than most for the elite athletes. I understand he's going to get $500,000, I believe, and there's also a possibility of getting more money. Money's great. Y'all want money. No one complained when they got that stimulus check from Trump. But ultimately, when I'm thinking about Jalen Green, to me, the best route may have been college, because you're going to get better coaching in college than you will in the G League.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of out on it right now. I'm definitely on the side of, the 500,000 is there. You get your own team in Southern California. You get the $125,000 credit from the G League to, go back and get your scholarship whenever you want it, pretty much on demand, and get that NBA level training that I think is essential for a lot of guys. You mentioned it. Jalen Green he's an insane athlete. I mean, he plays above the rim. He plays bigger than he is. He can get by guys. Again, kind of similar to RJ in the way that he's going to have to really develop that outside shot to take his game to the next level. But in terms of just an overall athlete, he's extremely fun to watch. I think going to the G League for him and staying, close to home while making money, and then, have the ability to even go back to college is definitely, I think it's really hard to pass up. The college point is definitely, worthwhile to talk about, because college coaching is on another level. It definitely does prepare you for the next level, whether it's a guy like Penny Hardaway at Memphis or John Calipari at Kentucky. They're going to take those guys and get them ready for that next stage of their games. But as for now, I definitely think it was the right decision in terms of bypassing the college offers he had and taking that $500,000 contract. I understand it won't be that high of a sum of money for absolutely everyone that comes out of high school, but at least for a guy like Jalen Green, everything was kind of just put there by the G League. It was a really enticing offer from what I've seen. And so I can't fault him for, taking that money and the prospect of everything that's there. You get your own team, G League Select, whatever you want to call it, NBA training. We're gonna see. I mean, it's kind of like the test, the test drive. Like, will he benefit from this? Will he have benefited more from going to college? I guess we'll see in a few years. Will this get him ready for the NBA at a level that others, won't have the advantage of getting ready? But I don't know. I mean, I at least for now on paper, I'm going with the fact that I think he made the right decision.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting, and it is kind of like, as you mentioned, the area you're in, Cali. You're going to be there. You're going to be getting a different type of system, a different type of preparation for the next level than a lot of the other players are. But yeah, he's very, very explosive. You mentioned something about the $500,000, and I mentioned it as well. It's not going to be there for every single player. Another guy that's going to be taking the same type of move, type of jump, is Isaiah Todd. Now, people may be wondering, who is Isaiah Todd? Is he good? Is it worth it? Is he just another guy that wants $500,000 because it's there? Is he really this big talent? Well, in Rivals, he's their 14th ranked player in the class. 247 Sports, he's number 14. ESPN, their top 100, he's number 13. So from all of the three major ranking systems that we utilize here in the country, he is good. He is very good. 6'10". He's good around the rim. He likes a 3-point shot. He has a Dirk-esque fadeaway, one foot jump shot, fadeaway. And it was kind of, I saw it, and the guys that were commentating there, they're like, oh, wow, that's pretty good for a high school guy that's 6'10". It's not really a move that most guys can use now. And if they use it, they really embarrass themselves. But Isaiah Todd, once again, I mentioned the money aspect for this reason. Jalen Green going to get the $500,000. There are endorsements there that are available. People are saying they're estimating that Isaiah Todd's contract will be around $325,000, which is still great money. It's still really good money. Don't get me wrong. But after you take off your money for your insurance, money for your agent, money for taxes, that's dwindled down. And then you're going to be getting top-notch training, and that's going to be a lot more money. So, yeah, now you're going to be wondering and learning that, yeah, this guy, he's good. He's going to the G League over high school. But for him, Jalen Green, maybe a good shot. For Isaiah Todd, I think he needs the college coaching right now, because even for a stretch four, there's a lot of things that even 1 year in the G League, you're on that select team, I think that it would probably be better for him to get the top coaching, or to get the coaching from college over the G League. Real quick, Ethan, what do you see from Isaiah Todd? Thoughts about him going to the G League and taking this route over going to college right now?
Yeah, like you mentioned, again, you talk about a 6'10" stretch four. I think that's exactly what he's going to be in the NBA, but he plays not smaller than he is, because he blocks a lot of shots on defense, and he's a good rim protector. He jumps out the gym, but he plays like a guard on offense from the perimeter. He's spotting up. He gets a little too happy with the three sometimes, doesn't use his size to his advantage all the time. But he's an interesting prospect in the way that, yeah, like, I'm looking here. I think he said something about, when he got the call from the G League, it pretty much was irrefusable. And he had to do what's best for his family and whatnot. And of course I respect that. That's 100%, on the player. If they feel like they have to collect that, that first check, before you can even get to college. I mean, you're going to have to do what you have to do. But playing in college for a guy like Isaiah Todd, I agree. I think just that game experience of finding his kind of role on the court, because that's one thing with him, is I don't think he has a definitive role that I see as, at least for now, or a niche that could translate to the NBA level, successfully. Because he's kind of just all over the place in terms of, you see flashes on offense, Sometimes you see horrible shot selection. Sometimes you see him taking good shots, using his size to his advantage. Definitely that year, just seeing him, cutting up his tape in a game against other top guys, against other prospects would have been nice. And I don't know if he's going to get that in the G League. His salary is definitely, I think, a little bit lower than Jalen Green's in terms of what he's getting. But when he's saying like, I got a call, it just sounded perfect. It sounded like a no-brainer. Like I kind of understand that. I mean, everything, they kind of lay it out for you in terms of the benefits. But I mean, I don't know. The jury's kind of out on Todd. I'm not super high on him. I do like his game. There's definitely some positive indicators. And it's going to be interesting to watch how he, grows with Jalen Green on that select team.
It is. I was looking back at him and his path through high school. Started off at John Marshall High School, Richmond, Virginia, and then he went to two different private schools that both gave him scholarships. Trinity Academy in Raleigh, North Carolina, then also Word of God Christian Academy in Raleigh, North Carolina. So I'm pretty sure this isn't a bad thing on him at all, but I'm pretty sure the people that are coming to him and coming to his family and that are laying out this plan for him to go to a different school, a private school, laying out the scholarship that he's going to be getting, I'm sure that they've been getting a lot of things. Their people are portraying them and selling them on what they're wanting to provide for their son all the time. And ultimately, like you said, he got the call. And it was kind of just like a no-brainer, but they're salesmen. That's what they do. They know how to lay things out for people to go this route and to do something that kind of be a pioneer, a guinea pig, to go this route and to see exactly how it is this new program is going to work. I'm going to group these guys together, Isaiah Todd and Jalen Green. Not really talk about them as prospects, but how do you view long-term, not just saying next year, but long-term? Do you see the NBA keeping this route and keeping the same money the same way with the $500,000 that trickle on down there for elite athletes to try to lure players from college to go to the G League? Or do you think the NBA will just do something completely different to revamp things completely, but still do a same type of program to where it's not this program now, it's completely different, more money, maybe a different league as well, to try to get players to come to them immediately instead of going to college for 1 year?
Yeah, I mean, it's just going to all depend really on how this test run, like you said, how the guinea pigs do, how Jalen Green and Isaiah Todd do, what's their experience? How do they perform? How do they grow in this 1 year? That's going to be really indicative of kind of like what happens in the future for the NBA. I'm really excited because I don't know, I think personally at this point, like you might as well just let the guys go straight from high school to the NBA level. Instead of, this NBA G League kind of safe spot, if you're just going to already let him into, a kind of professional stage like the G League. So I wonder if that's something they're going to shift to in the next few years or whatnot. But it's interesting because it's all going to depend on kind of who buys into it and how well these guys do this year. What are their experiences? Was it a positive experience, a negative experience? Like, could they have grown more? I think it's going to be interesting comparing guys like Todd and Cunningham to guys like Cade Cunningham, or it's not Todd and Cunningham, Todd and Green to Cade Cunningham, who's taken his year at Oklahoma State, and kind of just seeing how they progress and how they grow in their games and their development throughout their 1 year in college, throughout their 1 year at the G League level. It's really all just going to depend. I really thought Greg Brown, who recently committed to Texas, 5-star guy, was probably going to take the G League route as well, just with the way that things were going, but he ended up going to Texas. So that's another guy, you compare him to someone like Todd or someone like Green, in the way that they grow in this 1 year before, the big stage, before the NBA level. How do they progress in their games? What's the better route? I think a lot of prospects, guys like, you can even get further into it, but Jonathan Kuminga, Emily Bates from years ahead that are going to be probably, highly rated prospects I see a lot of guys on Twitter just saying, Bates should never play another high school or AAU game again. He should literally just be offered a contract by the NBA, reserved, and sit out until he's ready to be drafted because he's that kind of talent. But it's kind of just going to be all telling for the future years. The way that Green and Todd perform, the way that they're perceived in their 1 year in the G League is going to set, it's going to set the margin for how things work in the future in the G League and college basketball and whatnot. So this is a big year for the way that this turned out. It's going to be something I'm watching, very heavily. I really hope that they at least broadcast G League games, put them, on a national stage, so that we can see these guys play in real time, because I think that's, a big indicator.
I agree. I hope they do. I know they do ESPN Plus right now, but a lot of guys, a lot of people like you and I would really enjoy a whole lot more than putting it on ESPN2, ESPN News. I mean, not really so much ESPN2 News. A lot of people don't even watch that channel, but a lot of people, ESPN2, it's a great way for people to see different prospects. And ultimately, hopefully down the road, they start finding a way to put the European games on ESPN and the Australian games on ESPN, because fans like us, we want to know who's coming next. And a lot of us don't want to, I mean, of course, different time zone. So it's completely different when you're overseas in a different league. A lot of times your time zone doesn't work with our work schedule and our life schedule right now. So a lot of people would really be really happy if the NBA said, hey, we're going to put some of these Australian games on ESPN, or some of the other games of top prospects or top games of other leagues, because it really enhance ESPN and the viewer aspect for all of us. Really quickly, Ethan, really quick, I know I mentioned this earlier. Rapid fire. I like to end every conversation that I have a guest on here on the podcast with a little rapid fire. Give me your first thought when you hear the question or statement that comes out of my mouth into your speakers or into your headphones there. Kind of a fun way to wrap this thing up. At the end, I'll give you time to promote yourself. If people want to connect with you via social media, you can have time at that. You can take time at that time to let them know where they can connect with you and some of the work that you're currently doing. Thoughts or question number one: favorite Michael Jordan play that you have watched?
That I think that one reverse he had where he hung in the air for what seemed like 10 years, and then he put I can't even remember who it was against, but I've watched it probably 5 or 6 times, where he reversed and he held the ball, changed the ball in the air probably 6 or 7 times. I always wonder, like, how do you have that kind of hang time? Like, it's actually insane to me the way that he got off the ground. He's before his time. And playing in what he's playing in Jordans too, is like, how do you jump like that? It's crazy to watch. That's definitely the first one for me.
Another player, you mentioned him earlier, LeBron James. Favorite LeBron James play that you've seen?
I think when he absolutely just baptized Jason Terry, that was just a great that was a great that was a great call. That was a great I think it was Kevin Harlan maybe on the call. I don't remember who it was, but I mean, that was just the Norris Cole lob, and then James just jumped out of the gym and just absolutely threw it down on poor Jason Terry, who was taking his retirement years on the Boston Celtics. So that was probably one of the best dunks I've seen since I've been alive, at least.
Favorite NBA player, not currently, but a guy that you weren't able to watch live while you're living, that you've watched via YouTube or watched film of old school guys, not named Ralph Sampson because you mentioned him earlier. Favorite old school guy that you're watching and learning of right now?
I cannot stand him now. I don't know why. I can't. I called him the Booger McFarland of the NBA a few days ago. But Reggie Miller, I mean, he just the way he played in terms of just he was before his time. Again, a guy just before his time in terms of catch and shoot ability, off the dribble, whatever you want to. Yeah, he's so forgotten, and he's extremely fun to watch, fun to dissect. Probably one of my favorite players of all time. I cannot, unfortunately, stand him as a commentator. And I don't know what happened, because I feel like he has good insight. But on the court, I mean, one of my favorite players to watch of all time.
Bro, I'm a Pacers fan, but I do understand Reggie Miller calling games, man. It sucks because I love Kevin Harlan. He does a lot of games with Harlan, and I'm like, Reggie, just you're doing way too much. You have to find a different way to relay the info from your head to us, the listener, the viewer. But all the time, man. Yeah, him on the court, one of a kind. We'll probably never see another guy like him, because he did learn how to kick his legs and use his arms to his advantage, and so the rest would not call fouls. But yeah, him calling games, it's bad. It's really bad.
It's tough, and he's just the way he was able to draw fouls, get in opponents' heads. He's fun to watch basketball. I find watching a lot of that Pacers and Knicks series. I think I'm probably giving a super basic answer, but that's the series where he scored the 8 points in 9 seconds or whatever. I think it was. So I mean he's just probably one of my favorite that I've ever gone back on and watched that I wasn't necessarily alive for.
A game you watched you'll never forget?
I think it was Embiid. I'm the biggest Embiid guy, just because being a Sixers fan, I try to stay non-biased, keep it off my Twitter and whatnot. But trust me, when the Sixers are playing well, I'm all in. Unfortunately, I'm not missing them at all with the NBA season going. I'm actually blessed to not have to work my heart up over just a terrible game of Al Horford clogging up the paint and whatnot and stealing money from the Sixers franchise. But anyway, Embiid, when you look at him in 2017, I think that game he put against the Lakers, ESPN maybe just re-aired it. He had 46 points, 15 rebounds, and 7 blocks. And Julius Randle was trying to guard him. This is one of Embiid's breakout games. Just one of the most dominant performances I've ever seen from an NBA big guy. No one could stop him. We only won the game by like 5 or 6 points, but Embiid literally had to do absolutely everything to beat this Lakers team in Staples Center on a big stage by himself. And a lot of my friends out here, are Lakers fans in California. So kind of having Embiid drop a 46 piece straight on their heads, straight on. I think Bogut was a member of the Lakers at that time, and Julius Randle, whatnot, was definitely sweet and something I could use in class the next day.
Favorite vacation spot?
Hawaii, anywhere really. We've gone. I think Maui. I don't like Honolulu as much because it's a little bit more of a city feel, but I think Maui is the one where it's really just calm and nice. And I'm hoping that we can go back soon. I don't know when this is all gonna wrap up and whatnot, but I mean, definitely a fun summer, like 1 week getaway spot.
Yeah, definitely. My parents actually, with this whole virus thing going on, they kind of had to change the way or the place they're going to go to celebrate their 40th wedding anniversary. And so they were thinking about going to Hawaii, but then my mom was like, that may not happen. Well, because with the virus, you don't know. But man, right. I've never been. My mom talks about it all the time. My dad's just like, yeah, I'll go back if she wants to. That's kind of his mindset. But yeah, man, it's a place I want to go. Kind of the next thought here. Where's a place you would like to go, but you had never been?
Oh, man, I've always wanted to go to Italy, and I know it's probably horrible now, the amount of they've been on lockdown for however long, but I thought Italy was super cool just with the with my limited knowledge of their what is it? I can't even think of the name. The rivers that flow through the city and whatnot on the gondolas and stuff. That's super. That's honestly I've always wanted to go to Italy. I still want to go to Italy. I would say South Africa because I lived there for a year when I was in 3rd grade. And that was just amazing. But yeah, I definitely want to go to probably, I would say Italy, or I mean, even back to South Africa, but you mentioned a new place. So I'd go with Italy.
Better prospect, Obi Toppin or James Wiseman?
Toppin, in my opinion, just because he is probably more NBA ready at this point. I'm relatively really low on Wiseman, at least more than the mainstream media is, just because I just, for one, the small sample size kills me. I wish we could have more college games of him. Again, that's kind of the NCAA, their deal. You can get into that, whatever. But that the one game that is really indicative of Wiseman's tape is against Oregon, his last game of the NCAA season. And I just really struggle to see him. He doesn't have a jump shot right now, spacing the floor and whatnot. He's slow off his feet, slow on his feet. He's a project. He definitely has some, great natural athleticism, just a human specimen the way he's built. But Toppin just in the terms of NBA readiness, and I think he does have a role as a potential stretch for whatnot. Even though I'm not necessarily as high on him either.
A game you would love to attend from any sport?
I've always wanted to go to an Eagles playoff game at home and at Lincoln Financial Field. But I've gone to my fair share of Eagles games. We try to go back every year, at least for one. We've never made it out to the link for a playoff game. So I definitely would say Eagles playoff game at home.
Yeah, man, their fans are crazy. Did you live out there for a little bit?
I did. My dad was born in New Jersey. So, I mean, since the day I can even remember, I was putting on Allen Iverson jerseys and I was brainwashed for Philadelphia sports fans. So I had no choice. I've been locked in since the beginning. So I mean, it's that culture out there is just is unreal though for sports and whatnot. And I can't root for an LA team the way that fans out here have so much other to do than care about sports. It's just like I had to stick with my allegiance from my dad since I was young.
Last one, Kobe Bryant. What is one thing from his playing days positively that you'll never forget about Kobe?
Man, I mean, I used to, when I was really little, I used to kind of be a fair weather Lakers fan out here just because I didn't know any better. All my cousins liked the Lakers, so I just wanted to jump on the bandwagon. Fortunately, my dad, brought me back to the 76ers side of it pretty soon. Didn't let me get away with that one. But I think Kobe, just like, it was, as a young kid especially, the biggest thing I remember is like, you just know that when the fourth quarter rolled around, no matter where he was pulling up from, he was going to try to get his team back in the game. And more often than not, he did get his team back in the game. He turned into a different, 3-point shooter, mid-range scorer, even though that was kind of, his game, but especially a 3-point shooter in the fourth quarter. He just, would rise up, contested shots, whatever, leave him open. I mean, you're done. But Kobe was just in the way that he elevated his game towards the end, because again, like Jordan, kind of just, had that winning mentality under his belt. that's one thing I'll never forget is I felt like I was just watching a superhuman in the fourth quarter when he would perform.
He's my favorite player. Superhuman is a great way to describe him on the court. It's unfortunate he's no longer with us, but we'll get to relive his memories. ESPN, all these networks will replay his games. Of course, we got YouTube. At the click of whenever we click the button, we can watch whatever we want to watch. Take some time before we wrap this thing up. Take some time to let people know where they can connect with you via social media, some of the work you're doing, and things like that.
Yeah, so I'm just at Ethan Piechota. That's my name on Twitter, and then I have my own draft podcast that I'm running right now. Kind of figuring out what I want to do with it, but you can follow that on Twitter as well, at Prospect Pod. Don't know whether I'm going to turn that into more of just an audio thing or a video breakdown where I'm kind of dissecting plays as they happen, drawing things on the screen and whatnot. That's kind of my idea for that. And then you can also just catch a bunch of scouting reports and whatnot that I'm going to be releasing pretty soon. That I have the links up on my Twitter and whatnot. So I like to go in depth on players and kind of really dissect their games to the fullest to get a good evaluation on them. And I tend to post a lot of clips from what I see about players and whatnot, just to gain my perspective on them, put my perspective on them, on my page and whatnot. So if you're interested in that kind of thing, interested in draft talk, definitely something that I would recommend. I'm always open to draft discussion and whatnot, and kind of just that's my thing right now. So yeah.
Thanks, man. Hey, real quick, I meant to ask you this earlier. How old are you?
I'm 19 years old. I'm a freshman at Arizona State University.
Okay. So, I knew you were at Arizona State, but I wasn't sure the age. You definitely don't seem like a 19-year-old as far as the wisdom and the knowledge that you have of NBA basketball and being able to analyze and dissect all of these players that we watch on a regular basis. And if it's a high school player, a G League player, I guess going to the NBA or anyone that's on their way to the NBA, you do a phenomenal job. Ethan Piechota, and for those of you listening, his name is in his name is in the title of the podcast of this particular episode. So in case you're wondering how to spell Piechota on Twitter, it is in the title of the episode. Because I know when I first saw it, I even asked Ethan, I said, how do you pronounce your name? Because I was kind of stumped by it as well. If you told me that, I wouldn't know how to pronounce it. Ethan Piechota, thank you very much for coming on the J Stevens podcast and helping us really kind of get a little bit deeper into this new route of players skipping college to go to the NBA. Thank you so much.
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on, man.
And I quote, Booger McFarland of the NBA, end quote. As a Reggie Miller fan, a lifelong Reggie Miller fan, I grew up with Reggie Miller, a lifelong Pacers fan, you would think that would hurt. You would think that would pierce deep into my soul when that comment came out of his mouth. But no, I have watched numerous games that Reggie Miller has called. You have watched numerous games that Reggie Miller has called. There are times people watch games when Reggie Miller's on the call. They may love Marv Albert. They may love Brian Anderson. They may love Kevin Harlan. They may love them. They may love their work. Love how they go back and forth and provide a great flow throughout the game. But when Reggie Miller's on the television, some people say, nah, I'm going to dial that down, mute the television, turn the radio play-by-play guy up on the speaker, on the Bluetooth speaker, because nobody really has a radio anymore in their home. It's all via Bluetooth, and we stream just about everything. Is Reggie Miller bad? Was his play on the court better than his commentary? Yes. I don't fully agree with the Booger McFarland of the NBA quote, but I can absolutely understand where someone would come out and say, Reggie Miller, you are horrible at commentary. Because honestly, guys, it's not his best attribute. Thank you for listening to the episode of the J Stevens Podcast. As always, you can follow me on Twitter at JStevens07. If you would love to connect with the podcast and you are not on Twitter, send your emails to jstevenspod@gmail.com. Remember to always subscribe, rate, and review. It's a great way for people that are searching for a new podcast to listen to come across this one. Then remember to always get the word out about the podcast via word of mouth. The things that we enjoy in life, we are more willing and somewhat wired to tell other people about. So no matter if this was your first episode or if you have been listening since episode 1, be sure to let people know about the podcast. This has been episode 89 of the J Stevens Podcast. I'll see you next time.